Hey guys, it's Matt here, and today I'm doing another TokuStation review. Now, this is take 3. Let's hope we don't have to do any more takes. I will be infuriated. Now, I sound calm on the outside, but on the inside, dying slowly. So, anyway, moving on, let's talk about what we're talking about today. We are talking about Zyuranger, episodes 11 to 15. Now, if you're new to watching or listening to these reviews, understand that I call it Zyuranger because I've been calling it Zyuranger since I first got into the fandom, and I will call it Zyuranger until I am on my deathbed. You want to send me to my deathbed? That's fair. Let's go. But right now and forevermore, I'm calling it Zyuranger, not Zyuranger. So anyway, moving on, we're talking about episodes 11 to 15. So that's My Master, Papa's a Vampire, Fire the Golden Arrow, Become Small, and Destroy the Dark Super Sword. Dun dun dun. So these episodes actually made me appreciate Zyuranger more than I ever have with Zyuranger. Now, I should clarify that I haven't finished the whole show, so this is me going back. I got up to when Budai was introduced. Some of you may know him as the Green Ranger, Tommy. So I haven't really finished Zyuranger. So I'm trying to watch this not just to review it with you guys, but also coming into it fresh. So, somewhat fresh, because I had seen, again, up to like episode 17, I believe, 16, 17. So, I haven't seen these in a while, but the reason why I appreciate these more now than I did when I was younger, not because I came into it then thinking about this, like, oh, this comparing this to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. No, not necessarily, but I do think that I came into this thinking about Sentai that I had started watching at the time from the late 2000s when I first got into the fandom, and also other Sentai from the 90s, mid to late 90s, that I just enjoyed more than this. I thought, these are just some, 5 characters from the past. They're not really, they're not really engaging with stuff in the present, which I did have a problem with in the first 5 episodes, and I still kind of do. Like, they just kind of act like everything's normal, like they're not, shocked over the fact that everything has changed throughout all these years. But even though that is the case, I kind of harped on that a bit too much, and I didn't really look at not only how cool these monster designs are, and these monster designs are amazing, but also the fact that there's so much world building with the monsters. Now, what do I mean by world building? Well, when looking at some of these monsters, the fact that every single one hasn't been created by Bandora or one of her generals, and I know it's technically always Leprechaun, but looking at other Sentai, usually, if it's not the main villain making a monster, it's some other general saying, oh, I will either make this main villain proud of me, or, oh, this other general, I don't like them, I will make this villain to spite them, this monster of the week to spite them. So the fact that it's neither one of those in some of these episodes, and it's just random other mythical creatures that exist within this universe, that's some great world building, and something that I really don't see that often in Sentai. Usually it's either like characters like the Jin, or characters like that I guess you could call him a gnome in the forest that, the Help Wanted ad. With those two, usually you would see something like that in, they would either be something that would never actually work with in any way with the bad guys. So what I'm referring to is the fact that it'd be like some random alien from space. Now that does happen in Sentai fairly often, especially if it's a space series, but they would never actually, the bad guys would go, oh, we're trying to kidnap you, not, oh, we actually managed to work with you for a little bit. Where with the Jinn, yes, the Jinn was actually much nicer than we thought. The genie was much nicer than we thought, but at the end of the day, they still were working with him very easily at the beginning of the episode. Same thing with the gnome, where it's like, oh, we had a Help Wanted ad, which is hilarious to me, but we had a Help Wanted ad, and then he came along and actually could have worked with us if we were actually nicer to him, or if he was a bit more of a jerk. It's a bit different than usually the standard, oh, we're going to kidnap this person. Granted, the Jin one did come down to that, but still, usually it's kidnapping from the get-go, or it's, you will increase our powers tenfold from the get-go. It's never really, oh, you actually kind of worked with us for a bit. And I say usually because, of course, this is Super Sentai. It's going on for so long that obviously it had to have happened in that way, in some way or another. But I'm just saying that usually it is either, oh, you are part of us from the get-go, or you do not want to be with us. And it's very interesting to see something like this, and also to try to juxtapose and try to, kind of really juggle all of these stories with these kids that in some cases I do think we could have just kind of let it go. Maybe because here's the thing. So I have no problem with the stories with the kids. I get it. Super Sentai, it's even though it aired in Japan. So as someone who is in their 20s, I can still watch it and feel as if I'm watching something that, because of the way standards and practices and FCC and stuff like that work with, in the U.S. versus abroad. There are just certain things that are in these shows that you would really not see, even in 90s television shows for kids. You really wouldn't have seen. So I have no problem watching these, but at the end of the day, we do have to acknowledge that kids are usually the intended audience, especially for Super Sentai. If, at most, it's a family show. So I do understand that the kids are going to be in this. I don't hate the kids. I really don't. But at the end of the day, though, I do think trying to juggle both stories, either with the kids and with some of the monsters of the week, or with the heroes, who are being focused on in that week, be it May or be it Goshi, I think that you could potentially either lose the kids or I don't know, just maybe make it a two-parter or something like that, because it's a little hard to juggle, I think, especially this series having 19 episode runtime. Now, granted, or 19 minute runtime. Now, frankly, I love the 19-minute runtime. It's a lot easier to watch and also review. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to juggle that, especially when in Zyuranger compared to Zyuranger, usually they'll do two-parters if they need to, and I really do enjoy that about Zyuranger. Zyuranger, they try to wrap everything up in one episode, and I just sit there and I'm like, but Goshi, especially with his sister died. I mean, that's a huge thing that you have to grapple with and deal with. And another thing too that was an issue too with that one is it's not like the same warrior actually is the one that killed Goshi's sister, which also made it weird. Like you have something there that I think was really refined in Zyuranger. Like it was funny, a similar suit too, even something that was refined more in Zyuranger and made it mean more. Not gonna talk about it because that's spoilers, and I will review it one day. So, but it really resonated with me, and it was like, and obviously some people would say that was very reminiscent of something like Star Wars, but it still made me feel like, ooh, that was a bit more pressing than this one, where yes, Goshi's sister died, referring to, of course, episode 15, Destroy the Dark Super Sword. When Goshi's sister died, and that really means a lot, but it wasn't one person that necessarily killed his sister. It was Bandora and her entire army. So unless he's trying to find the exact golems that killed her, it really felt odd that it was trying to go for this angle of, oh, don't worry, you have to fight your fears the same way that I did. And also, it seemed like Goshi never really had a direct conversation with the kid. So I'm happy that the kid learned to, fight his fears and stand up, and he actually helped the Zyurangers. That was amazing. But again, trying to juggle both, it takes away from what Goshi was trying to do. And then introducing Goshi's story takes away from the kid potentially getting some more screen time. And overall, it just felt like neither of them, like, yes, they got over their fears, but Goshi got over his fears long ago, and the kid got over his fears in the moment. To us, the viewer, we can see both things play out and see them both come to their conclusion, but the characters feel as if they never really got that sense of closure, if you will. Much different than episode 14, Become Small, because even though I do think that was also a hard one to juggle, juggling the gnome and then juggling, taking out the gnome, but actually, no, was he a gnome? It's hard for me to know if he's a gnome or an elf, because I know that another character that trained them with carrots was an elf. Oh no, he was a fairy. Either way, point being is that when looking at both the kid and the gnome from the forest, and having them trying to juggle their own issues, because technically the kid is a screw up, but not really, because his parents are yelling at him. Great moral of the story, telling parents, especially if parents are watching this with their kids, hey, understand that you can discipline your kids, but understand that your kids are still kids. So when you yell at them like that, they don't know what's going on, right? They just think, oh God, I'm being yelled at by an adult, and that's scary and that's terrifying, especially showing it from the kid's perspective. The camera angle really did a great job of that, and I think that was an amazing, takedown, something that you don't even see in U.S. television. I've never seen, like, I've seen shows make fun of parents, of course, wah, 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 like, that happens all the time, for years now, but to have a show tackle that directly like that, I think it was a beautiful thing. But to try to juggle that alongside the gnome, and also being, yelled at by Bandora in a similar way, it was still just hard to do, because 19-minute runtime. Granted, better than episode 15 in my opinion, but still really hard to do. Something that was weird that I noticed that I never really noticed in Sentai before, and it's happened a few times now and again, don't get me wrong, but I really don't notice it that often. Maybe it's just me. Random songs, or songs that to me seem random, being thrown into the episode. Yeah, now some people would be like, Matt, that happens in Sentai all the time. No, but here's the thing. Those are insert songs that you can tell are sung directly to sell you that merchandise and how amazing that new mech is. So that new mech, whatever new assembly, whatever new part to that mech comes up, and then all of a sudden you have amazing voiceover, voice actors who usually say the mech's names or whatever, coming on to sing a song that makes you go, oh my god, this is amazing. And then you potentially buy those CDs and buy those singles. That makes sense to me. That's marketing. In this case, though, looking at episode 11 when they were looking for pieces of the genie's lamp, or when in episode, I believe it was, I don't remember if it was 15 exactly, but it happened a few different times. There were random songs that came up, and I was like, is this somewhat like, is this like May singing, or is this somewhat like, was this a tie-in at the time? And also the fact that it isn't subtitled, does that mean that Shout Factory didn't get the rights to like subtitle it? Because yes, clearly they were able to put it in the DVD. Of course, they didn't have to remove it, but at the same time, usually that's the case because of home video rights. If they transfer over just right, I don't know if, to be fair, I don't even know if Shout Factory had to get the rights to that song or other songs that have randomly appeared in the middle of episodes. But I'm assuming, and again I'm assuming here, that because wherever they got the rights from, let's say it's Toei, could have been Saban, but let's say it's or Hasbro now, but let's say it's Toei. If they got the rights from Toei obviously has the rights to put it out on DVD and on not Blu-ray necessarily, but DVD. I mean, I haven't seen Zyuranger on Blu-ray, DVD and VHS and Laserdisc, all that stuff in Japan. So then those rights were potentially transferred over. Usually music rights are separate, but they were randomly in the middle of the episode themselves. It wasn't like that was an opening and ending. So I have no idea. If you have any info on that, please tell me down below, because I'm wondering what songs they were and what potential relevance they could have had to the episodes themselves. Also, I want to jump to episode 11 for a second. Something that I found interesting just watching the DVDs is Jin. So Jin, of course, is a genie. Usually Jin is spelled D-J-I-N-N. But Jin was spelled G-I-N, like Gin. Like Gin, either Gintama or Gin from Bleach. But it's interesting, I'm wondering if it was written in a way where they were like, no, it's clearly, we all know it's Jin, but it's stylized as G-I-N. I have no idea, I don't know Japanese, but I found it very interesting that it was written that way. But usually if it would be pronounced Gin. So just curious, because I heard them, they were like, no, it's Gene. So usually there would be a D there. Unsure, no idea, just putting it out there. Usually that's how Jin is spelled, and of course Jins are genies, like Disney's Aladdin, but I actually did some research on this during my second take, and I found out that this episode actually came out before Disney's Aladdin came out. Now, of course, there have been stories about Jin for centuries, so obviously, Jins and genies aren't new to pop culture or new to, stories in general, obviously. But it's interesting that my phone is ringing, damn it all to hell. But moving back to my point, all jokes aside, it's interesting that Disney's Aladdin came out in the same year, by the way, 1992, both of them did. But Disney's Aladdin actually came out in November, where this episode actually came out May 8th. And also the fact that this episode, of course, would have been filmed months in advance anyway. So did Disney watch this episode and then maybe get some ideas? No, they didn't. They obviously didn't. Why would Disney watch, Simba and get any ideas from, other... I'm kidding. I'm half kidding. No, but seriously, though, all jokes aside, obviously Disney's movie would have been in the works for years, years, obviously. Even if it was a year and a half, still years. So, but it is interesting to see how both cultures have a really nice genie, where usually when I see Jins, and they're referred to as Jins and not genies, they're kind of rude. They're kind of jerks. I mean, even genies, looking at Norm from Fairly Odd Parents, kind of a jerk. So it's kind of funny. I know it's based on Norm more than based on genies, but still, it's kind of funny that this version also had a very nice genie and kind of one and a story that actually juggled between, oh, is this going to, are you a bad genie or a good genie? It's like, look, I'm whoever my master needs me to be. You order me to do something and I do it. But I still think that it was very nice to see. Like I mentioned earlier, it's nice to have someone not necessarily be a villain of the week, but also not necessarily be a damsel in distress. Like, oh, we have to save this thing 1-to-1, because of course this genie could murder you if he wanted to. Actually, I was very shocked they didn't go with the whole, oh, now you're free. It was more so, no, now you don't have a home, and if a new home is created for you, you're screwed. But no, if this genie wanted to take you out, he could have. It's just that he definitely did not want to do it. Like, it's like, hey, look, I just get orders to do stuff. Really, if you order me to hang out with you, I would love to hang out with you. And it was actually really nice to see these kids not just have like one kid of the week, actually have, all these different kids come together and just hang out with the genie. Granted, I do think that their judgment was a little bit lacking, because I would have sicked the genie out on Bandora and her crew immediately. Like, there would have been no question, like, oh, these people want to hurt you to take the genie. All right, then we'll command the genie to murder them. Like, what? Like, the fact they were like, let's protect the genie. I'm like, the genie's going to protect you, kids, actually. Or just be like, hey, genie, can you put this in a protective case that no one can take it from? Or, hey, genie, can you glue this to my hand? Granted, Bandora's magic also probably could have negated those wishes, potentially. But still, it was nice to see another magic user in a world filled with magic. So briefly, I want to talk about my favorite episode out of all these 5. I thought it could have been episode 15, but sadly that one kind of, it sucks, because there were so many things in 15 that I thought, oh, this could be my favorite. And then they kind of just dropped the ball a little bit, in my opinion. So 15 would have been my favorite. I wanted 11, I have to admit, was close to being my favorite, but I think it's because of the fact that they ended the episode with just like, well, let's throw it back into the ocean. It's like, can't like Barza help you somehow enchant? I mean, granted, they did put like an emblem on it, so it's like it would be, or some kind of medallion, so it'd be harder to find it. But couldn't Barza, like, I don't know. It's just really rough when you introduce an all-powerful genie and your response is, let's just throw him in a fucking lake. So that's frustrating. Papa is a vampire. Actually, I'll go on the record saying that's my least favorite, because I felt completely lied to. I thought we were going to get her dad being a blood-sucking vampire, and that would have been dope. Now, sure, yes, it would have been. It was another thing, too, by the way. So we don't get her dad being a vampire. Oh, well. But you have a monster that looks so amazing. The amount, I just want that suit. I don't care if it's decayed in a Toei warehouse right now. I want that suit because it's absolutely terrifying. It's one of my favorite suits I've ever seen from Zyuranger, from what I remember. And I know it's really hard to compare that to Frankenstein, but still, this is one of my favorite suits. Was Frankenstein in Zyuranger? I think, yeah, Frankenstein was in Zyuranger. I don't know what they called him, but I'm pretty sure Frankenstein was in Zyuranger. Either way, point is that I loved that suit so much. But no, he's not going to like shoot really cool eye beams or do anything like that. Granted, he did a little bit against the Zyurangers, but no. He's going to make a kid freak out over the fact that her dad might be a vampire so that she won't believe in her dad anymore. Like, look, I understand that the show can't outright have him just kill a kid, but like, come on. I mean, I think the ultimate way to scare a child is to kill them. That's recorded now. Okay, look, I'm not endorsing that kind of behavior. I'm just saying that that's Bandora's motto, and that's kind of what she wants to do. So why would we not do that if that's kind of like you know what? Let me be nice about this. Kill the dad. All right, that's just me being nice. Why would we not do that? Like, it's just, that'll probably scare a kid, I think, relatively quickly. Now, I'm not saying that he would actually end up getting the chance to do it, because first Zyurangers would come in, Zyurangers would save the day, but why would you just try to scare this kid into thinking that her dad's a vampire? And her dad looked like a convincing vampire, too. Yes, that scene at the end was kind of funny, but kind of odd. Like, he's just holding a woman who felt faint in a very odd way. But still, it was meant for comedy, but like, you give this kid a bat, and this kid, by the way, coolest kid on the show thus far. I would want that kid to become an honorary Zyuranger. Just give her the bat. Like, she's amazing. And then we have her having to think that her dad's a vampire for most of the episode, or some of the episode. Also, seeing, I think his name is, oh god, I keep on forgetting his name. Taut Pat. Okay, so Taut Pat, who they have mentioned his name more recently, which is nice because I think maybe some kids or someone working on the show was like, can you say their names? Because I don't know who the hell they are. Like we mentioned their names like once or twice, and then he just stopped. Like they just kind of kept on coming around like, why hello Bandora, and like that was it. Like it was just Bandora's name has been said probably more than all of their names combined, all of the other people working with her. So yeah, Tot Pat, I like that he's a vampire because he clearly looks like one. So it's nice to know that he was inspired. His suit design was inspired by a vampire. But again, look, he's supposed to be incompetent, so that's fine. But then we have to create the idea of a vampire in her head when he's just like, when I'm sitting here like, but you are a vampire. So you can kind of do that to her when she's not paying attention. You don't have to fill her mind with all this stuff. Like I thought they were trying to fill her mind with this so she becomes catatonic and then they can come in and suck her blood. No, just let's erode the faith that she has in her family. Which, I mean, yes, it was so strong in her to be fair, but again, just you could also beat up people. Like I don't know, it's one of those things where you know what it is too, I think it's because some newer Sentai, some of the villains look so cute, like they look more like Bookback and not like Tot Pat, or some of the Monster of the Week don't look like this particular Monster of the Week in this episode, that when they look so adorable and cuddly or just incompetent, kind of like the monster and Become Small, when you look like that I go, okay, yes, you are not a threat. When I see the monster in this episode and I'm seeing his, because if you guys don't know, I'll have the episodes on in the background as I'm talking about them, I'm looking at his stalk just staring at me. He looks so terrifying. Why would he not do more than just create illusions? Yes, an eye creating illusions, standard, right? I get it, makes sense. For any of you laugh like, he's joking. No, seriously, a lot of eyes create illusions in media. It's true. So I get it. But still, why would you not have him do more? That's just my take on it. But again, probably due to the runtime. I will say, though, even though it isn't the weakest episode, one of the weakest was episode 13. And I think the reason why is because, while I'm happy they tried to do a May episode, because I do think, it's nice that we've seen everyone in the on the team have one episode dedicated to them, and I'm pretty sure May has not had one as of yet. Like, usually May just gets jumbled in with everybody else or with another person's episode. It's nice to give May her own episode, but it's a little odd that they give her the episode, and I'm not saying that no other Sentai member in the history of Super Sentai has had this happen to them, but it's just odd that we give her, like, we're trying to give May her own episode where she shows her own strength and everything like that, but when looking at it, it's something that has only been poisoning kids. Granted, I know that every episode has something happening to kids, but the thing that poisons kids the most and is really only affecting the kids is what ends up affecting her the most. Now, I'm sure Boy had an episode where something like that happened to him, to be fair, but still, it's just one of those things where it's like, really? Like, the one episode where it's like, oh, all of this stuff, it's affecting the kids. Oh, man, it's going to hurt the kids much more than anything. And also you, May. Now, I will admit, yes, it was nice having her, showing the trials and how cool that looked with the fire and everything, like, looking at those effects and everything like that. It was nice, but it was just an odd thing to have her go up against, because usually with a Sentai member's, their specific episode, either you have them talking to a kid and relating to the kid, or I'm talking about this series in particular, or you have them getting over their own personal trauma, which that actually does happen in plenty of Sentai. But in this case, it was neither. It was just strange. It was like, this is a deadly trial that is randomly coming up. And now, I know deadly trials randomly come up in Sentai all the time, but looking at other shows, especially those in the 90s, usually they made them 2-part episodes. So to kind of have it be a random 1-part episode of like, this is a deadly trial in episode 13. Hey, look, she overcame it. Oh, dang, her arrow is the strongest arrow ever. Woo! Granted, that's awesome, right? I'm happy that her weapons are that powerful, especially against this monster in particular, but it's just strange to me because when looking at this episode, you could argue that she could have just hit him with the arrow in the first place and the whole thing would have been done with, potentially. Granted, she didn't know that, and none of them knew that, but still, I don't know, it's just weird that she was the only one affected and the only one hit by it. Granted, you could argue, of course, the monster's going to target her because it knows, oh shit, right, you have the arrows. Either way, though, I just feel like it was one of those that it tried to be a really cool, like, oh, this is for May, and see, she's getting one too, but it could have been better, I think. And I hope that there are better May episodes in the future, because, May exclusive episodes, because I do want her to have her time to shine. I just think that this episode was a weird way to try and do it. That's just my take on it. But no, I have to say, though, the fight choreography, it's I don't think it's weird, because I'm not gonna say it's gotten better. I enjoy it, of course, watching it, but I think that in some ways we have less of it than I would like, especially when fighting other monsters of the week when transformed. I hope that we have more of that in the future. I hope that we have episodes where, maybe they start off with more fight choreography. I feel like some episodes have delved so much into these, these characters, be they kids or be they when, a Sentai member specific episode, that we end up getting away from actual fight choreography, which I really do enjoy in a Sentai, in any, Tokusatsu show. And I'm not saying that there's little to none, but it does feel like it's less, because, again, as I say over and over and over while doing this review, 19-minute runtime, what can you do? Now, one thing I do enjoy is I enjoy less mech time. Now, here's why. Nothing against mechs, right? I do admit, yes, I like more one-on-one fight choreography than I do giant mech choreography. I do, but nothing against giant mechs. My thing is this, though. My thing is, it's just nice to see that every episode doesn't have to follow that same exact formula, because some Sentai are really such a huge slave to this formula. And look, I get it. You got to sell those toys. Believe me, I get it. But they're such a huge slave to this formula that, even if there's only 2 minutes left in the episode, heck, you want to say 2 minutes left, including the ending theme, so that's 30 seconds on the clock, you will still have them get into their mech, do a giant slice, and then call it a day. And it's like, guys, did that villain, Monster of the Week, really have to get that large? Really? Couldn't they have just been slayed in that, in that way? And I do like that in this series, they, due to runtime and stuff like that, trying to go for character drama more so than, do we have to get this mech fight in? Otherwise, what are we going to do? I do enjoy that they go for character drama rather than just trying to slide that mech in no matter what. I also enjoy how Barza does seem to be kind of coming back into the fold a bit more to tell them about different stories and lore and things like that. It doesn't seem like Barza had kind of, because for a bit there, it seemed like Barza kind of retreated. I was like, Barza, where are you at? Like, why are we not seeing you at the base? What else do you have to do? Granted, yes, I think he's technically working as a janitor, as it seems to be, or a caretaker rather, to take care of the grounds that, around that apartment complex. But I'm kind of sitting around, I'm like, Barza, what else are you doing? Why are you not here helping the Zyurangers when they need your help? You're a powerful wizard, and I'm sure you know a lot of stuff. You should probably be helping them. But still, either way, I was happy Barza came back, and I'm also happy to see a lot more of Bandora on Earth. She seems to be a very on-hands Sentai villain, and that's something that we don't really see in Sentai that often. Usually we see a Sentai villain either be some grand, large, more so of a being and an ideal than actually, yes, they'll have a voice, but more of an ideal than actually a villain that can kind of step out and do some damage. Or, of course, the standard, it's the 20s, so that's when the villain gets, or the 30s, that's when the big villain gets a body to inhabit. Usually that villain, even if they do have a body to inhabit, they just kind of, stay hid away in the shadows. And yes, you could argue, but if that villain does step out that often, why does she not fight? Or if she does get involved in some way or another, it seems like she's not getting the job done. And I get where you're coming from, if that's your thought process, if that's your argument here, but I just want to see more Sentai villains actually kind of just on Earth, just doing, because it just feels as if with a lot of Sentai villains, they're really just in some, they're in some base somewhere. I just say some warehouse. I mean, sometimes in a warehouse, but usually in a base somewhere, doing nothing, just telling their villains what they can, telling their generals what they can do. And at the end of the day, it's just like, but you can get to Earth, can't you? Like, aren't you, hell, sometimes you're on Earth. Can you not just go onto the surface world and just wreak some havoc if you need to? And so I'm happy that she does that when necessary. It makes her seem like she's much more formidable rather than some grand wizard sitting in a chair or something like that. But one thing that happened, I believe it was episode 13 actually, I don't remember the exact episode, but it was definitely in these 5. She looked in her giant telescope and saw the Zyurangers, and they were in their base. And that confused the ever-loving hell out of me. It might have been 15, actually, because if you know where their base is, why are you not wrecking shop? Why are you not sending everyone in there to wreck shop? And I know what you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me suspension of disbelief, Matt. But here's the thing. No Sentai, out of any Sentai, from what I know, do the bad guys actually know where the good guys are stationed? And when they do know, that base ends up getting pretty explodey. Because it has happened before, if I remember correctly, where they're like, wait, that's where the Sentai is? Oh, awesome. Let's destroy everything. Like, that has happened. But usually the bad guys do not find out where the good guys are. Usually. So it is just odd to see her just looking through that telescope and going, oh, hey, look, that's where they are. Right there. Hey, how you doing? You know, it's like, no. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. That just looks really bad on your behalf, because in that case, that does make her look incompetent. Like, well, why don't you just send the bad guys there? It's like, yes, Bars is there and he's a wizard and everything, but just have Pleprecon make like a good couple of models of artwork, as he calls it, and just send your other generals and just have them step into the base. Now, I think maybe Bars at one point said, or will potentially say, Bandora's magic can't step foot here. Perhaps, maybe it's a sanctuary. Maybe that's kind of just involved in the whole thing by it being being inhabited by the spirits of them and Bars's energy, and he's a white mage and Bandora's clearly not, so maybe you could say that, but it was just odd that she could see into them, because you could just kind of see what they're always planning then. Like, oh no, Bandora sent out this monster, here's what we're going to do, and she just sees in and it's like, oh, they're going to plan this. Excellent. I will do this to counteract it. So it was a rather odd scene. I know it's a small one, but it was just something so out of left field. I was like, why can she see into their base? So I just wanted to bring it up. Also, I should mention before going on to episode 15, hilarious how in 14 that kid actually got larger and he was able to stand and fight against essentially a god. Like, can you imagine? You are a god mech. You have sentience. And you're sitting here like, a mere child is actually standing up to me. This is kind of infuriating. So that was funny to me, how infuriated those gods must have felt. But moving on to 15. I said earlier, I think this one had a lot more potential. And the reason why is because I wanted to see more from Goshi fighting that warrior, and we saw some stuff here and there, sure, but I just felt like we could have had more, and also just, introducing that warrior with that sword rather than potentially maybe turning the kid evil. Like, that would have been interesting. Like, oh, don't be scared, fight against your fears. I don't know, maybe the Japanese standards and practices, maybe they were told you couldn't do that, or hey, that would be a little bit problematic if you did, because it's the Zyurangers fighting children, like, dear God. But I think that would have been a very interesting dilemma for them to have if it would have been the kid in that armor instead of some random warrior that we've never seen before, who again has no ties to Goshi or the Zyurangers. As far as we know, is not the one that killed Goshi's sister. If so, then that would have been amazing to see it. We've seen it in other Sentai before, I know, but it's still always a good tie-in, especially when you have a story like this being presented out of nowhere. Like, Goshi has a sister, and she was murdered, and it was by Bandora and her, and her crew. Oh my God, was it anyone that we're fighting this episode? No. Well, then there's a certain level of detachment there. So, and I know I said this a little bit earlier, but I still want to drive it home here because this episode would have been my favorite, because even though I love the suit design from the monster in Papa's a Vampire so freaking much, I still, I don't know. I still think that I love this one so much that this would have been my favorite. But sadly, it's not the case. My favorite, I think I actually didn't mention earlier, I went off on a tangent. My favorite episode being episode 14 out of all of these. Would have been 11, but 11's my second. But episode 14 is my favorite. But man, it could have been 12, and man, could it have been 15 if that emotional drama was really there in 15. It would have been a hard choice between 12 and 15, but both in certain ways kind of dropped the ball, and it's kind of sad because I do feel for Goshi, don't get me wrong, and I'm happy that Goshi had an episode centered around him. He's had one before, but I'm happy he had this one as well, getting to know more about his backstory and his family and his clan. but I just think that there could have been a lot more to it. Also want to mention, I believe this was in episode 15, having what I assume to be the voice actors, it could have not been, it could have just been two actors as stand-ins, but what potentially were the voice actors for Bookback and Totpat, if those were actually their voice actors, that was such a fun cameo, because I usually love when we see the voice actors for certain characters show up as themselves, but in disguise, or other kinds of cameos where you're like, oh my god, that's the voice actor, no way, like stuff like that's so much fun, and it's happened in, not even just in Sentai, but also in Kamen Rider as well. I believe in the Kiva Deno crossover movie. I think it was a Kiva Deno one. I know it was the second Deno movie. We actually had all the different voice actors for the different Imagines in that movie, and it was so much, the Imagines that possess Ryotaro. So it was just so much fun. Really found that awesome. So I was happy to see this here too. If it is their voice actors, if it's not, oh, okay. But if it was, then that was really cool, because again, they were pretending not to be themselves. It was like, oh, these are just two random people at the door giving you a gift. That's not odd. But I mean, a child, yes, taking it, but still not odd at all. It's funny. Now it's funny. To me, at the time, that's super odd. Like, what are you doing? Looking at this from a 2019 perspective, oh yeah, it's my Amazon delivery. Like, now I feel like that's so obvious, but at the time it's like, it's 92. Did you order that on the internet or something? Like, why is a gift being sent to your door? Super funny and super suspicious. Now it just seems like it's the norm. It would be like if someone, you know, in the 90s, it's not a taxi cab, but it's like, kid, why'd you get into the car? It's just like, yeah, actually I seem dumb for doing that. Nowadays it's like, why'd you get into that car? It's like, well, that was my Uber. So it's kind of funny how the times have changed. Not sure if it's Uber in Japan, but it's kind of funny how the times have changed. Alright guys, so we're about to wrap up this review, but before we do, before you tune out, before you click out of that video, remember that if you want audio versions of these podcasts, not just this TokuStation review, but other reviews as well that I've done for TokuStation, and not just the reviews, but also the news episodes that I've done, talking about different news articles, you can actually access those by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/TGProductions, and depending on what tier you go to, you get all of them. So not separately, you get all of them all at once. Also, before you tune out, I want to say that if you have a specific episode that you really love from Zyuranger out of the episodes that I've talked about, or even other episodes as well, please comment down below. If you disagree or agree with the stuff that I've said about Zyuranger in this episode, please tell me what you think down below. Would love to hear what you guys think. If you like the video, then please remember to like and subscribe. If you don't like the video, you can still like and subscribe either way, or dislike and subscribe. If you hate watch us, that's totally fine. I respect you. You can do whatever you want to do. Alright guys, so thank you all so much again. Love you all. Take care, and tune in next time for something that is potentially TokuStation related, or maybe not. We'll find out. Alright guys, so see ya.